Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Epic Vision Zone. My name is Jane Applegath, a former award-winning stockbroker, television producer, script writer, yoga instructor, and serial entrepreneur, now founder of the Epic Vision Zone. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your greatest epic story so that you can live at the speed of your most audacious dreams, a place where your life roars with purpose, prosperity, and love. Here at the Epic Vision Zone, we bring you some of the world's most influential people to inspire you to hit the go button on your epic life. A big thank you to everyone for being here today. Roshani Shakshi wrote, "Make yourself a myth and live within it so that you belong to no one but yourself." Our guest today, Dr. Rima Bonario, is a dream weaver, soul coach, and wild heart healer. During a 30-year journey that included receiving a doctorate in transformational psychology, trainings with master teachers, and much, much more, Dr. Bonario came to discover her feminine superpowers and self-sovereignty. She is now a renowned thought leader, speaker, and teacher on women's empowerment and the connection to the divine feminine within. Her coaching, workshops, online courses, and sacred travel journeys use the unique power of myth, archetype, and much more to show students how to create a roadmap for embodying their sacred feminine powers to form wildly fulfilling habits of attention, which I can't wait to delve into. Dr. Bonario's best-selling book, The Seven Queendoms, a soul map for embodying sacred feminine sovereignty, explains how women can use the energy, majesty, and noble nature of the queen archetype to consciously create a life they love. She is the founder of Bloom Fine Egyptian Oils and the Sisterhood of Anointing Priestesses, as well as the co-founder of the Art of Quantum Living, LLC, which trains and certifies people in the 21-day shadow work practice called the Quantum Living Process. Her passion is helping women create and live a life they love through wholeness, relationship harmony, and abundance. Welcome, Dr. Rima Bonario.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Likewise. I just cannot wait to delve into this topic. So let's get started. In your book, you wrote, "For most of my life, I have had no idea how to be a woman." Tell us about that statement and how it led to the work you do today.
Well, for me, growing up, I was part of a family that had a really strong father. And my mom was not terribly empowered in our family dynamic. And I got the clue very early on that if I really wanted to be aligning myself with the power of the family, that meant aligning myself with the masculine energy in the family. And I became a tomboy and just hung out with my dad and did a lot of things to try to get his love and affection and attention. And that ended up carrying on in life in many different ways. Ultimately, I had some trouble as a teenager trying to connect with boys and those people that I had crushes on. They never seemed to return the interest. And it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I discovered that part of the challenge for me was that I was living my life in a way where I was pulling on my own masculine energy so much that my energy signature would often read masculine. And while I did a lot of things in my adult years to mitigate that, when I was a teenager, it was incredibly painful because, I was just one of the guys, right? I wasn't a girlfriend material at the time. And I couldn't understand why that was. There was something happening at a really deep energetic level that I didn't understand. And it comes back to the question of embodiment and living in our bodies. And that's really what I help women learn how to do, is to come all the way in and inhabit our bodies deeply, because that's where our feminine superpowers are.
Wow, fascinating, especially with the topics floating around right now. But we won't get into that because that could be a whole nother segment. But that is really, excuse me, fascinating because I am sure there's a lot of women that can relate to that. I too myself had a very strong father figure, and he was a huge influence. But I had four sisters, so I'm not sure if that maybe equal or balance the scales a little bit. But yes, absolutely. How interesting. So give us an idea of what self sovereignty means.
Sovereignty is the idea that we are able to be in a place of self governance and have supreme authority over ourselves without undue influence from outside of ourselves. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think that very many women these days feel completely sovereign, that we have all the rights and responsibilities and freedoms that should be afforded to us as individuals. And that can be even harder when we're inside a relationship and we aren't sure how to balance our desire to take care of the people we love with our desire to take care of ourselves. And sometimes we actually even forget to take care of ourselves. And so, this idea of becoming clued into and focused on our own self sovereignty is so important because it's actually what allows us to long term be available for other people. You really can't give away what you don't have. So, very often, the thing that we think we're doing that's loving is really more about a transactional exchange. We're in a sort of a giving to get mode, and often we don't feel met, and it can cause us a lot of trouble in our lives.
Yes, I love that you said that we influence ourselves without the outer influence, how we influence ourselves. That is really powerful. I've never heard anyone put it that way because we always think of influence as coming from the outside in. But to influence ourselves is a huge aha. You know, it changes your entire perspective. So thank you for that. Yeah, that really is something that I think women in particular have a hard time, like you said, taking care of others while taking care of ourselves. So now, in your book, The Seven Queendoms, I just love this. By the way, give us an idea of how it originated, the inspiration, and how it evolved.
So, what really got me started on this journey of finding how to be more of a woman and feel my woman, my woman's the special things that we get because we're women. What is it that's unique about that? I was having a very tender and vulnerable conversation with my husband. We are great co-parents. We always got along wonderfully and built a very beautiful life together, have been best friends. And we also struggled a little bit in our intimate life. We would have challenges where sometimes we just wouldn't be able to meet each other in the ways that we wanted to, and things would go south and it would be very painful. And one day he just looked at me and with a very tender heart said, I'd really like it if you could work on this, if you could fix this. And of course, we thought it was my problem. And in the beginning, I started to get some healing and take a look at what was under the rug, what was really happening, and how it was that I wasn't able to be connected with him intimately the way I wanted to be. And eventually, through my own growth, we then figured out what were his pieces of that puzzle as well. And we were able to really make some major changes in our life. And part of it is coming all the way back to what we talked about earlier, which is the energetic signature that's running underneath how we live our lives. And I too have been a serial entrepreneur, and it takes a lot of go-getter energy and a lot of get it done kind of movement. And sometimes I would spend all day long in push mode, and I'd get to the end of the day and I literally had nothing left. I had nothing left for the people that I cared about. I had nothing left for myself. I certainly had nothing left for the bedroom. And sex was like another chore. I had to just check off the list, like, oh my God, really? And that was a problem. I needed to learn how to be in the experience as a receiver rather than looking at it as yet another thing I had to give or do.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I'm sure. And it's interesting because you brought up the energy, which is fascinating because that segues right into our next question, where the human electromagnetic fields, you mentioned this in your book. You say that living that all living things are electromagnetic fields, and that in the physical sense we are magnets drawing energy in and pushing it out. So tell us about the significance of the human energy, because you just so eloquently explained to us what that was, say, when it came to the end of the day, to be intimate. Your battery, for me, it was almost like your battery was empty.
Mhm.
There was no charge there. There was nothing left. But the
Yeah.
electromagnetic field and how you explain that, give us some insight into that.
Well, you can look at every living thing. Now we have technology where we can actually measure these things, and we see this around the earth itself. We see it around all living things, that we are electromagnetic energy fields, which means we have an in pole and an out pole. Energy moves in and it flows out. And the direction that that energy is flowing can be different depending on if you are in a male body versus in a female body. I learned this by studying with my energy master, who's been raised up in the indigenous traditions here in this country as well as other countries. And our understanding, I mean, this was like radically brand new for me. I didn't recognize myself as somebody that had an energy body to start with. So that's a whole thing, just recognizing that I have a physical body, but I also have an energy body. And the way that I move energy is either going to fill me or drain me. And there are certain activities that are filling and certain activities that are draining. And I had to learn how to prioritize making sure I was doing the things that created a sense of charge, as you called it, in my body, in my system. And I was working in such a way that I wasn't draining myself all day. And so for the male embodied person, it works well for them to be in action. They have a great deal of capacity to access the hero energy, the go get it done, the sporty kind of get out there, make it happen energy. And we love that energy. That energy is a beautiful, powerful energy. It's all about production and creation and building, but we tend to over preference that kind of energy in Western culture. And we don't have enough respect or reverence for the being energy, the kind of energy that magnetizes, that pulls in, that's generative and sustainable, that honors cycles. And women have more access to that form of energy because we are cyclical beings and we are connected in that way to nature by the very way our bodies operate, by the fact that we have a womb space. And so we pull energy in, and that actually is what charges us. So it's a little bit of a mind trick, because we need to learn that if we want to have enough to give, we need to first fill our well all the way up to the top and allow what's overflowing to be what we give away. So we're giving from a state of abundance and from luscious overflow. And that took a lot for me to change how I was operating in order to be able to live like that.
That is beautiful. I love the way you put that, to be able to fill our well so that we are giving from a state of abundance. And can you give us an idea of what women can do to help fill ourselves up? Or is it different for every individual?
Well, there's a couple of things that are universal, and then there are certain aspects that are certainly unique to every individual. The most important thing that we have to do as women is we have to learn how to come into our body. We have to recognize that the body is the portal for healing, and it's the instrument by which we can tell if we're charged or not charged. And the sad truth is that most of us were trained out of our bodies at a very young age. We were trained to pay attention to other people, what they think we should do or say or feel or act. We were trained to ignore our own intuition. If you were one of those girls that remembers having your hair pulled and tugged while your mom was trying to brush it and style it, you were probably trained how to turn off your pain sensors. You might have been on the receiving end of some kind of abuse in your household. And that too teaches us to turn off the relationship with the body because we don't want to be receiving that kind of painful information. And the problem with that is that when we're not tuned into our own bodies, we don't even know when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're tired, when we need to take a break. And we just keep going and going and going until we give out. And we become what I sometimes call crunchy, or my daughter calls salty, and we're no fun to be around. We're no fun for ourselves. We're no fun for anybody else. And we think we're just doing all this stuff for everyone, but really we're not doing anybody any favors at all.
Right, right. Wow. So learn to be in your body. I would say anything with movement like yoga, ballet, all of those movement types of meditation, I guess would be in the being sense, but yes, I'm sure that would help as well. Well, thank you. That was really insightful. I appreciate that. And now let's get into the queens, because identifying your queen. Which queen are you? Or do we all have aspects of the seven queens that you cover in your book? Does the reader learn to identify which type she is as well?
Sometimes we have a person that, or a personal preference for a particular queen, but in reality, what we're trying to do is really bring all of the queens online and help them to be allies for us. Each queen oversees a particular area of sovereignty. And as I was working to establish more sovereignty in my own life, I broke it out into these seven different areas. And it became very clear to me that they work together. And when one is hampered, it can hamper the others as well. So we really need to take time to be with ourselves and ask ourselves the questions. I mean, one of the nice things about the book is that there's a lot of activities and journal prompts and other kinds of exercises and embodiment practices that I have in the book that can help us to really get in touch with these seven areas of sovereignty.
Yes, I love the way the book is laid out. I have my copy right here, and I have been see I already have my stickies here, but I love that you've got prompts and exercises or reflections, and like you said, it's an all-encompassing book. It tells a story, which you've woven throughout the book, which is so beautiful. And then you've got your explanations and then your exercises. So yes, it is a beautiful book, and certainly something that I could see giving as gifts for Christmas myself, because I love the archetypes. So you also mentioned in your book the shadow queens. What exactly is a shadow queen, and how does it relate to fragmenting your energy?
Yeah. So when we talk about the seven different domains of sovereignty, I'll just name them briefly. We've got physical sovereignty, sexual sovereignty, energetic sovereignty, emotional sovereignty, our dharma sovereignty, which is our work in the world, and our service. We have mental sovereignty and then spiritual sovereignty. And there's a queen for each of those domains. And the idea is we want to be in a balanced approach with how we operate within any one of those particular domains. So I'm going to take energetic sovereignty as an example. The queen that oversees energetic sovereignty is the empowered queen. And in order to really be in our power, we need to have energetic sovereignty. We need to be able to master our energy body, because when our energy body gets overly stressed, that's when we can get really, really triggered. And when we get triggered, we end up using our power in non-productive ways or misusing our power. And that's when we move off of center, and we can either become overexpressed using too much power, and that leads into the cutthroat queen, which is a shadow version of the empowered queen. or we can shut down and tune down, turn down our own sense of power and dampen our own power because we've been triggered. And that's like the what I call the beheaded queen, where she's sort of cutting her own head off. And for myself, my life, this particular queen has been my most challenging queen. How to be in my power in a way that is healthy. I would ping pong between the two. Sometimes I would be, raging and running around off with their heads and using my sword in all the wrong ways. And other times I would just be so triggered that I would just shut down and go inward and clamp up and not be able to speak and not be able to advocate for myself. And what we're seeking is to really sit on the throne in the center of those experiences. And by working with the seven queens in the book, you learn to watch out for these two shadow experiences so that you can find yourself moving back to center and help yourself really step more fully into the power of the authentic queen.
Mm. That is such an amazing skill to have. And I feel that. I mean, I'm sure many of us here have been both the beheaded queen and the raging queen. I mean, when you were saying that, I was like, oh yes, I've been there. I've been both, And I love the way that you put that, because it's kind of story which we all associate with. But to say to yourself, if you start to shut down, you could say, oh, I'm beheading myself. Wait a second, I have to bring myself back to center, because you become aware of the behavior that you are putting forward and how that serves you or it doesn't. Just out of curiosity, do you give the queens, do individuals tend to give their queens different names?
Yeah, that's a lovely idea. I do think that there are many queens, many people that I work with and my students in my programs that name their queens. They make little altar spaces for their queens. They've done all kinds of things, dressing in the different colors of the queens sometimes to help amplify the energy. We have a great time really connecting with these archetypes because they actually can become allies for you, energies you can actually call on. And some of the work we do is to sit and create an inner Queen's Council so that when we have an issue or a concern, we can take it into meditation or prayer or journaling and get some support from these aspects. They're really aspects of ourselves, our higher self, that can guide us and provide guidance for what might be a better choice here or a not such a great choice here that we might want to avoid. So you really do develop a strong personal relationship with these parts of the queen archetype that help us to embody our most noble self. And let's face it, that's what we all want. We all want to be the best moms, the best friends, the best partners, the best sisters and children that we can be. And sometimes people are just, frustrating to us, and we need a little bit of support for how we can show up in our best selves in those moments.
Yes, absolutely. I was laughing when you said sometimes they can be frustrating. Oh yes. But absolutely, that would be marvelous if all women could embrace this practice, because just think of how things would change. It is very powerful. And it was interesting because I was going to ask, when you get into different situations, you could call on your different queens to address those. Like you said, sometimes you dress in a color to, empower yourself if you're going to be doing something at that level, or other things, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it's almost like a superhero story, how you call
It
on these
is.
powers.
Yeah, it's very much that story, only from the feminine perspective. And uh, what that did for me was actually let go of the superwoman belief, the belief that I had to be a superwoman and do it all at the same time perfectly, and instead to see that I could trade my cape for a crown. And the
Mm.
beautiful thing about the queen is that she is fully resourced, and she's able to draw to her what she needs in order to be in her best self. That she recognizes that actually the act of receiving is her superpower. And so
Mm.
we put the doing after the being. We put the doing in service to the being, and we take time to nourish ourselves and become the source of our own safety and the source of our own creativity. And so once we've sourced ourselves, I actually think this is the real root of the word sorceress, is to be good at sourcing ourselves. Then when we are actually out there in the world doing the things that we want to do and the gifts that we have to give, it doesn't feel like a battle all the time. We feel very well resourced, very met. Synchronicity happens all around us. There's people that flood into our lives to support us. Things become much more enjoyable. Life gets so much more magical and fun when you're operating from the feminine archetypal patterns rather than being in that constant pushing mode. And by the way, you get to end the day feeling alive and juicy and available for connection, and have something left in the tank so you can cook yourself a nutritious meal instead of grabbing a glass of wine and hitting the Netflix.
Wow, yes, absolutely. That was beautiful, Rima. I love some of the things you said. Trade your cape for a crown and have the being in service of the doing. Oh my gosh, those are just fabulous takeaways. Thank and all of it. I love that explanation. And we did talk a little bit about the embodiment. So, what does it really mean to be fully embody yourself? And you did explain a little bit about why it matters. Can you delve a little more into that for us?
Sure. So when I ask women, where is your attention? This is, you mentioned in my bio that I love to help women develop wildly fulfilling habits of attention. And really, what this is learning to master bringing your attention inside your own body so that you can tell, wow, this chair is really uncomfortable. I probably need to get a new office chair. Or, wow, this lighting doesn't really support me while I'm working. Maybe I should consider getting a bit brighter light. If you're not inhabiting your body, if your attention is not in your body, you're not going to notice those kinds of things. You won't notice if you actually have the energy to say yes when someone asks you, hey, can you, run down the street and mail this package for me? Some of us are like, we're automatically wired to try to be in that people pleasing place. And so we say yes to things that we don't really have the energy for. And we go into a kind of an energetic debt. And we end up living from this indebtedness. And it creates a lot of resentment and bitterness. And we start to get mad when we don't see or feel people giving back to us to take care of us because we're so busy taking care of them. And embodiment is the practice of stopping the focus that's constantly out there and bringing your focus in here first, feeling what's going on in your body, checking in and actually asking your body, can I do that or can I not do that? When someone asks a question, giving yourself a moment to consider, or even getting in the habit of saying, you know what, I'm going to give that some thought and I will get back to you. So we don't, do that automatic response. We can actually consider it with the body's help. And so then that allows us to return back to the outside world with our attention, but from a very grounded and connected place where we haven't abandoned ourselves in the process. So really that's what embodiment is all about, learning how to stay connected within your own body while you are in relationship with the outside world.
Thank you for that. That is so well put. Not what I thought what you meant by embodiment. So I am glad that you clarified that. Uh, the awareness. I love when you said at the beginning, knowing that maybe the lighting's not good or you're uncomfortable, but you just continue on. You ignore it. You just push ahead like a lot of women do. I mean, we've all done it at one point or another. And but waiting and stopping and saying, wait a minute, I need to adjust this, or I give myself space to have an answer for something that people are asking. That is such an incredible tool to have, because we are in a minute by minute world. I mean, it's like one of the girls that I know, she said that we live at the speed of a commercial. And it's like nobody can, we don't stop for anything. And this is so important. So thank you for that. Here's a
Yeah,
question that I
that
have. Go ahead.
if you don't mind, I'd love to comment on that. So the that type of speed, living at that speed is very much the warrior masculine energy.
Mm,
The
okay.
queen, however, is she doesn't allow herself to be rushed. And this is why we need this archetype, this noble energy in our lives so badly, because the warrior in us and the warrior in all of us in our human family right now is out there fighting everything. It carries a sword, so everything looks like a battle. And it's just fighting to fight because that's what
Hmm.
it does. And if we don't bring that slower, more considered, thoughtful energy into the space so that we can be in choice about whether we actually need to be in conflict right now or whether there's another solution, we're never going to get ourselves on track, and we're facing problems right now as a human family that you can't kill your way out of. You can't kill your way out of a
Mm.
pandemic. You can't kill your way out of climate change. We need cooperative, considered, networked solutions, which are the things that come from the feminine archetypal energy. So, what you're talking about is so important. And we can start by doing these small things in our own lives. It may seem too difficult. How am I going to change the world? Well, you change the world by changing your part of the world. And you can imagine the queen is not going to, she's not going to put up with sitting on an uncomfortable throne or having to operate in a space without light. She's just going to, you know, ask for her minions to come in and support her. And for us, that means we ask ourselves. We ask ourselves to provide for us in the way that we need to be provided for.
Yes, absolutely. It is so vital today. Thank you for that. That was it's like you said, we need to be able to have conversations, and we need to be able to pause and take a breath. And like you said, be aware. And I'd love to have minions that would service me. So, but this is myself serving myself, correct? Yeah,
Mhm.
this is
Yeah,
it.
it starts there. Yes, absolutely. And the more comfortable you get with you addressing your needs, wants, and desires, the more you will actually train people in your life to give to you because they will feel you ready to receive. I mean, there's nothing more unsatisfying than trying to give something to someone and they just bat it away, right? How often have we done that? Can I have to get the door for you? No, no, I got it. We're holding all the things. Can I carry that for you? No, no. Like it's like somehow we have to prove that we can do that. And here's the thing. I mean, the queen, she knows she can do all that stuff. Of course, she could do it all. She could do every bit of it, but she doesn't have to. Nothing to prove to anyone around having to do that. And this can be confusing for us as women because in first wave feminism, we did have a bit of proving to do, so to speak. We were entering into areas that were kept from us and places we were told we couldn't work or we couldn't participate and jobs we couldn't have. And we needed to have access to those very important tools of economic power. But the way we did that was to try to be better men than the men. And we will never accomplish that. And now, in second and third wave feminism, we have the opportunity to say, okay, now that everybody gets it, that we're completely capable of doing these jobs and running our lives financially and having power, now we get to do it on our terms. And we get to do it in a way that works with our bodies and our families and our values, and that's more sustainable. And that's not just going to help women, that's actually helping men as well because they're exhausted too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is a perfect segue into my next question, Rima. So wonderful. How does the queen then relate to the king? In other words, what is your take on the male female power structures?
A lot of times, men and women get into power struggles because they're trying to vie for control. And this happens because everybody is working in their masculine energy. So it's like having two ends of a magnet that push each other away. And the desire of the masculine is always to be victorious. So if one person comes in with a challenge and the other person responds with a challenge, it's just going to keep escalating the situation. The truth is that when someone comes in with a blast of energy, the very best thing we can do is de-escalate so that we can all get into a place of calm and access our neocortex, the part of us that actually makes us think as humans and be creative. And unfortunately, or fortunately, as women, we have a little bit easier time de-escalating than our male counterparts do, just because the way energy runs in our body. So I remember having so much of a judgment around, why is it always me that has to like put the brakes on and calm things down and say, all right, I'm going to listen. And I just made friends with that. I turned it around in my mind and I realized, oh, this is not something that I have to do. This is something I am masterful at it. This is my superpower. I get to be the one who can wave my energetic wand and say, okay, we're just going to bring the energy down here now, and we're going to have a more reasoned and safe and nourishing conversation. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't also access my anger and when I need it, pull up that very strong warrior energy. Absolutely, I can do that. But I learned there's a way to do that from a very deeply grounded place in my body that actually has the same effect of like stopping all the crap, because you're just providing truth in a very feminine way, and it doesn't trigger the masculine need to overcome. It actually delivers the truth in this very solid way, and then the masculine just goes, oh, okay, I get that. I can respect that, right? And you get to move on. And so my husband and I have been in this dance now for 20 years, and it's been so beautiful to watch how our relationship has grown and evolved as we've come to understand these principles. And when you get to that point where you're both living more or less in your sovereign self, what's beautiful about that is my sovereignty doesn't have to be in battle with my husband's sovereignty. We both can be sovereign together, and then we negotiate when we have a difference of opinion about something from a place of complete and utter respect for ourselves and respect for each other. So no, there's no winner and there's no loser. There's us together seeking a solution.
Right. Yes. That respect aspect is so important, because I find that that's a lot of what goes out the window when there is an argument or a disagreement, because we just forget who the other is, and it happens in even in offices, and all over. It seems to be something that triggers, like you said, it becomes a trigger. And knowing that you're grounded in these in your sovereignty really makes a difference. I think that's the empowerment, because like you said, a queen knows how to do all of this, and a queen knows who she is, and that's the power within, so that you don't fly off the handle. Like I'm just thinking of Queen Elizabeth. You would never see her fly off the handle and get mad. I mean, I'm sure she has at some points, but not in public, and certainly, not while she's doing her duties. She was always very, staid, and the woman who you knew, she just emanated power. She
Yeah.
had that look of her.
Yeah, anger is usually a sign that a boundary violation has occurred. And
Mm.
that can happen sometimes because we haven't spoken our boundaries. We know what they are, but we actually don't hold them within ourselves. So people trespass on them, and then we feel irritated by that. Or there's somebody that's out there that's just, completely doesn't care about others' boundaries. So anger itself is perfectly fine, natural, and important. It's what we do with it that either creates more connection, more consciousness, or causes rupture and a breach in the connection. And we say in our family that, hey, rupture happens. It's all about the repair. Whoever moves towards repair first is the winner. And we've actually even trained our daughter to seek, what we use a tool called the redo, so that if somebody's, not shown up the way they want, we can ask for a redo. Hey, I really would like to redo that with you. And it's got to the point where she would say, we might not be showing up in our best selves, and she would just ask us, hey, can I get a redo on that? And so not her needing to redo, but asking us to redo. And so
Right.
we've made that comfortable for all of us in our house, to know that we get to have another try at being our best selves, because sometimes we're not, sometimes we forget. And that includes sometimes saying yes when we mean no, or saying nothing when we need to speak up.
Right, right, absolutely. Boy, wouldn't it be a different world if we had redos everywhere? I mean, I don't think we'd get anything done, quite frankly, at the state we're in today, but everybody would be redoing all day. But
Well,
but
you'd
that
be
is
surprised how fast it actually happens and how complete it actually is. Just a little bit of science behind this. When we hear something and we take it into our psyche, it goes into our memory banks as a chain of neuropeptides. So it's just a
mm,
bunch of chemicals that assemble in a particular way. And then often we'll forget about it. It'll go back into the non-conscious mind. But then we pull it up again when we remember something or when something activates it, and we have an opportunity to actually reassemble the order of those neuropeptides to make them either more strong or less potent. So when you do a redo and you state it in the present tense, as though you were actually saying it again in that previous moment, not I wish I would have said XYZ, but here's my redo. Will you please, instead of why didn't you? It actually has the function where it bumps the previous chain of neuropeptides out of the place it was occupying and replaces it with a brand new chain of neuropeptides. And it's so relieving to the nervous system when that happens,
mm,
because it's as though you've erased the previous experience altogether.
wow, that is fascinating. We all have to learn the redos. Definitely. It has to be in our vocabulary. It has to be taught in schools. Oh my gosh, that
I
is
would
so
love that.
powerful. That is
Yeah.
powerful. I love it. Oh my gosh. You have to have a whole little manual. It's called redos. And just so people can carry it in their pocket and say, okay, it's a redo. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. That was amazing. Well, you may have answered this question, but we know that the legends of women who mesmerize men and have had them at their beck and call. But is the goal of the feminine power that or not? And I think you may have answered part of that question in the previous answer.
I think sometimes there's this idea that if women become very empowered, that we're going to treat men poorly. And the reason that that fear is there is because masculine power is a power that uh, it overvalues domination. And again, we need masculine power. It gets things done, but it has a particular energy that's all about coming out on top. Where you can think about it like vertical axis, whereas feminine power, the way it operates is more circular or cyclical even, and it's more of a horizontal axis. So the way the feminine power operates in us, whether we're using it as a woman or we're using it as a man, because we all have masculine and feminine energies inside of us. That energy is more collaborative, more creative, more nourishing. It brings together people and skills and ideas from all over the place and weaves something new out of it. And it's it takes more time to lead from this place, but what gets created is more long lasting. There are times we need the command and control response, particularly in times of tragedy or emergency. We need to be able to act quickly and focus and use that masculine capacity for choice A or choice B. But feminine power actually is the both and solutioning. So there's no need for us to be in that fear that, unless we as women continue to emulate masculine power patterns, which will just put more of that energy on the planet, then we've got a bit of a challenge. But if we as a culture and a people begin once again to hold with reverence and respect the feminine way of operating, whether we're doing it as a man or doing it as a woman, then we're going to create more balance in society and we're all going to be better off.
Yes, absolutely. So, is there a difference then? You've got the feminine power and then you've got queen power. So, is that one and the same, or is the queen power then the individual power?
Well, I just use the queen archetype as a way of illustrating this kind of feminine power. And because it is complex, I that's why there are seven queens. There's a grounded queen to help us with our physical sovereignty. There's a passionate queen to help us with our sexual sovereignty. There's the empowered queen to help us with our energetic sovereignty. The loving queen helps us with our emotional sovereignty. The expressive queen helps us with our dharma sovereignty. The visionary queen is the one who supports us with our mental sovereignty, and then the divine queen supports us with our spiritual sovereignty. And when we have all of those areas of life functioning in at least a mostly healthy way, what we're going to discover is that we have built a life that we love.
Hmm. There it is. Exactly. Absolutely. Now, I would love to talk to you about Egypt and the Egyptian oils. How did you discover the deep connection you have with Egypt and the Egyptian oils and the power that they unlock? I'm fascinated
It's
by this because I love oils.
Yeah, it actually started because I had the question of how I was going to support my beautiful spiritual child in having herself be able to explore all of her deep spirituality without getting boxed in by a particular dogmatic religion. So it was a bit of a challenge. And what came back when I asked that question was the answer was to take her to sacred places and it would awaken her spiritually. But this was something that happened to me a lot at that time in my life because I was not embodied and focused on my interior life. I got ideas for other people that were really for me.
Mm.
If anybody's listening who's had that where they see something and they think, oh, so and so should take this program or so and so should read this book. Really, that stuff is mostly for you. And so when I eventually, a few years passed after I got this idea, oh, I should take her to Egypt. I had the opportunity to go to Egypt and co-lead a trip there with a friend and mentor of mine. And so we took a group to Egypt, and I had the most profound experience. I got off the plane and I felt like, oh, I just cried immediately. I was just so touched. And the gentleman guide who picked us up at the airport, saw what was happening, and he said to me, "Welcome home. This is what happens when the goddess calls you
Oh.
home." And and I began to have all these magical, mystical experiences while I was there, not the least of which was meeting a man who's become a very powerful teacher in my life, Gamal Abdel, who is a fifth generation alchemist and a Sufi master and a Reiki master. And he and his family have been creating and producing these oils in the same way that people have done in Egypt for thousands of years. And I learned that these oils that he was sharing with me align with the chakras in the energy body. So if you're familiar with the chakra system, they are very important energy centers in the body. And as I was doing my work with the queens, I discovered that the queens meshed with and related with the chakra system. So there's a chakra that goes along with each of the queens, which means there is an oil that can be used to help you embody and balance that queen energy within you. So now I share these oils with all of my students, and we work with them while we're doing the queen work in the online programs and the online circles that I run. And people have said to me, just like for me, these are utterly life-changing.
Mm. Wow, wonderful. I would love to try them. I know that they're available on your on your shop, on your website, and they look absolutely fantastic. I'm sure they are very concentrated too. They're
Oh, they're
essential oils.
incredibly powerful. Yes, then
Yes.
they're very, very high vibrational frequency. They're not like your regular neighborhood oils, even the really good ones that we can get here. And I will let your listeners know that if you order the book from Amazon, there is a coupon in the book for oils up at the front of the book. So and I think it might be at the back as well. So I
Oh,
always invite
perfect.
people to step into this work. It's so utterly powerful.
Yes, perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. I can't wait to try them myself because I'm really going to delve in. I love I did take an aromatherapy course a long time ago. This is way before anybody knew anything about the power of oils. And the woman that I took it from, people thought she was kind of crazy, because this was probably 40 years ago, 45 years ago. And they were just like, what are you doing? Who needs oils? But, it was aromatherapy with the scents. And of course, nothing, I'm sure, like the Egyptian oils. But I do know the power of oils. And so I'm fascinated. Thank you for sharing that. So I noticed that while we were going through this, that at the beginning of your book, you said that this message is needed and it's needed today. Tell us why that is.
We're living in mythic times right now. We're living through a period of rapid, rapid change. And it can be incredibly disorienting and produce anxiety in people. So many people, in fact, there just was released a report, I believe it came out from the CDC, that the recommendation is that all Americans who are under the age of 65 should get tested for anxiety. And the reason is that we're living through some unimaginable and very difficult circumstances right now. Everything from the concerns about our health and the virus to how we deal with this tension between what we do for our community as a collective and our individual rights to threat of nuclear war potentially. I mean, there's so much up right now, all the division that we're facing inside of particularly in the US, but it's happening in other countries as well, with the two different mindsets about which is the way to go forward. Do we go forward with this really strong masculine archetypal energy, or do we move more into a more nourishing, nurturing, sustainable, more feminine mother type energy? And that battle is going on right now everywhere. And we feel it inside of ourselves. We feel it inside of ourselves. And one of the things that I track and have studied is the deep time perspective. So there are cycles in time that are much longer than anything the human mind usually pays attention to. We track a day, we track a week, we track a year, we might track a decade. But there are multi-thousand year cycles. And we're involved in some changing that is going on in some of these deep time cycles right now. And so we're moving toward an era where the feminine way of being is needed and required for us to actually survive some of the challenges we're facing right now. So, as this era that's been primarily focused on more of this domination type approach begins to end, we're in the bumpy, you know, transition period. And we get to choose if we want to be on the transition team, if we want to be part of anchoring this new energy, this new mythic energy into the world now. And it's a tall order. And it seems like that means we have to be out there, telling other people what to do. And the truth of the matter is, all we have to do is do our part inside of our own bodies, in our own homes, in our own families, in our own work life. And that's enough. If we all do our part, then the whole job gets done.
Yes, it becomes contagious. It's just like the pull of the energy that permeates the US right now, and mainly because there's an election coming. So there's a large pull. It does affect other people, but you're right. If we, as individuals, took care of our being and our energy and so on and so forth, that too causes a domino effect, because we go out into the world and everybody we touch and everybody we talk to and interact with, it becomes a connection or not. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
completely understand. Yes, absolutely. It is vital. And you're right. I've heard that in many places, that we are in very epic times where things are changing extremely fast too. You didn't even mention the part of the knowledge and the computer world, which exponentially is just going at the speed of light. And so, how do we deal with that as well? So, yeah, lots of things are changing, and of course, the primitive human, is not one that likes change, because that is their primitive brain saying, "You don't want to change because I need to protect you."
Mm-hmm.
And I can protect you from what I know, but I can't protect you from the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that fear is it's the real problem. It's part of why we think we need that domination archetype, because we feel like it's the only thing that can protect us. And yes, there are times when we must stand up to certain kinds of energies and say, absolutely not, we will not do that. Absolutely, we will not allow this to happen. And if we have to be engaged in a battle to stop that, we will. It's just that we could create less of that in the world if
Mhm.
we were working on the interior spaces as well, if we were seeking to create a world that works for all. And it's coming. I absolutely believe with every fiber of my being that this world is coming and that we were born for these times. If we're here on the planet now, it was because we were born to be part of this era of transition. And I feel like it's an absolute privilege to be here now, to be called into this work, to become the best versions of ourselves that we can be, because that's how we create a tipping point in the larger world in general. And, when we get to have happy people with happy relationships in happy homes, then we will have happy nations, and then we will have happy worlds.
Yes, absolutely. As simple as that sounds, but we know it's not. It takes work and
It
awareness,
does, yeah.
but absolutely, that you gave me chills when you said that we are meant to be here at this time of transition. The perspective is amazing and so empowering. There you go. It is that was a very empowering perspective. Thank you for that. Well, what do you hope, Rima, readers take away from reading The Seven Queens?
The first thing I hope they get is permission to look out for themselves, permission to resource themselves, and to take look at the way they've been living life and the way they've been using their attention, and choose to make sure they bring themselves into a place of greater authenticity and greater integrity within themselves. And again, it's that moving from the inside out. So that's my hope, is that women and men, I've gotten a lot of feedback from men who've read the book and gotten a lot out of it, the book as well, that we become courageous enough to go into the dark places within that need love and attention, to find the younger wounded parts of ourselves that are still in there, and allow ourselves to do the healing work so that we can live our lives from the scar and not the wound.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. Well, then I have a question for you. Will there be a second book about the
Mm.
queen archetype?
I have a couple of books actually planned to follow up with this. I'm looking at considering right now whether I'm going to do a deeper exploration on the power of receiving and how we can be more receptive. And then I'm beginning to look at the type of priestess as the next round of work. And that kind of brings a little bit more connection to the divine and brings that energy in, and then connects with the queen so that we can bring that energy out horizontally. So that's pretty fun. I've got some research going. We'll see when the right time is for that to come out.
Mm, wonderful. I can't wait. I know it takes it. Your book is very thoughtful, so there's a lot in there, and for me, it's almost like a resource book because it has a lot of wonderful information in it. Besides, like you woven your story through that, so it is a beautiful book. What is the most exciting thing about your life right now?
Well, I have to say, the most exciting thing that's going on in my life right now is the fact that there's no drama in my house anymore. And I just, I pat myself on the back and my husband on the back for the work that we've put in order to create a life where we just laugh and we wonder, gosh, what did we used to fight about? Like, what were those power struggles we were always fighting about? Where little things become so big because the polarity and the energy is off, because we're not, in our own sovereignty. And then everything someone says, it's like the wind blows and we fall off of our center. So that's no longer my reality. And not only do I have the relationship of my dreams, but I have the work of my dreams. I absolutely adore working with women to have a life that they love, to be able to find these places of harmony within themselves and then create them for their families, create them for their work in the world, to be passionate leaders of other women and a voice like you are for change and for this visionary living. I think it's so important right now. So those are the things that are exciting me. And we got some programs coming up this fall that are really fun, and an opportunity to actually engage deeply in the work.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's actually perfect because I was going to ask you, how can women get in touch with you? And we will have all of your information in our bio pages, by the way. And do you have any offers or classes coming up, coaching? Tell us a little bit about what's going on with your programs and how people can get involved.
Well, I encourage you to come to my website, rimabonario.com. And if you scroll down on the homepage, there's a number of things that you can look at. The first is that there's a quiz you can take where you can discover which is the queen archetype you most deeply resonate with. And when you send in your email address, we'll send you a full archetype kit. It's a 12 to 13 page document with all kinds of information about how you can connect more deeply with that queen and put her to work in your life. So that's a fun thing you can do. And if you want to go a little deeper, you'll see that I have two things coming up. The first is the Queen's Council program that's happening in November. This is all about practice. This is all about embodiment. We were just talking about the need to get into the body. And so I love to do embodiment practices. And what I like to do is to invite other teachers that are my teachers and colleagues and friends of mine that I know are doing powerful work in the world to come and be part of this master class. So it's the Queen's Council faculty. There are 14 other luminaries in the feminine arts that are coming, two for each queen, to work with us to give us some practices for how we can embody these queens more deeply in our lives. And that's available. That's coming up in November. All the classes will be recorded, so if some of the dates don't work for you, you can catch those on replay and you'll have access to those for a full 12 months. And then for those women that really feel inspired to do the deeper work, in December we will open enrollment for my Queen's Court program. That's my annual signature program where there's a group of committed women who go through each of the 7 queens along with some powerful foundational pieces of work that we do all throughout the year. They get private sessions with me. We do shadow work. We do deep diving. And the transformation is just stunning. And we've created a really beautiful community of practice there.
That sounds fantastic. Well, like I said, all of that information will be on the Epic Vision Zone bio pages as well. But I encourage you to go to Rima's website and at least get your copy of all of the different queen and characteristics, etc., and find out which one is your dominant one. I'm going to do it myself. I can't wait. So any last words, Rima, that you would like to share with our audience?
My biggest wish for everyone here is the wish that you will find within yourself your feminine superpowers, your capacity for nourishment and nurturance and surrender and receptivity, the magnetic capacity you have within you to draw to you everything you need, want, and desire in life. This is your birthright. And it is my biggest wish for you that you activate this superpower within yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Very powerful. And because we're here on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question for you. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
I think it would be Sovereign unto Herself.
Absolutely perfect. I love it. Well, once again, thank you very much, Rima, for joining us here today. And be sure to check out Rima's website, as I've said before, and where you can also check out her shop. She has some fabulous items there, her oils, her books, cards, incense. I was over there looking myself, and I can't wait to delve in and get some of those goodies. And like I said, be sure to check out the Epic Vision Zone bio pages where all of Rima's contact information will be available. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. And don't forget to reach out to me, on janeapplegath.com, where you can grab your free download, The Keys to Your Dreams Success. Looking forward to hearing from you. This has been the Epic Vision Zone, transforming your dreams into epic success.